So, welcome back to this fifth lecture on collective intelligence. And in this lecture, we're going to look at the two fundamental forms of integrating knowledge. The first, which is the learning process, and the second, which is the enactment of a collective system. There are two fundamental forms of knowledge integration. The first is maybe what we traditionally think of, learning. You could say that this is the format where persons direct their knowledge towards each other with the purpose of creating new knowledge. In other words, learning. The other format is when we integrate knowledge rather in the form of a system. It's also called a transactive memory system. It is not with the necessary intention of learning, but rather using each other as knowledge resources in a system or a team. I don't have to learn what the others know, since there is other members who know what they know, and they are with me in this team. But since we are a team, I can act as if I had that knowledge. If we start with learning, that can also be in two fundamentally different forms, sometimes called single versus double loop learning. In single loop learning, we focus on the details of the situation or the problem solving of a certain problem setting. For example, open the can. Then we still have to solve the problem whether we're going to use a knife or a hammer and a screwdriver or something else. In double loop learning, we also question the assumptions of how we understand the situation. That is, we're working with the problem setting. Like in the can example, should I open the can or is this another type of problem? As you remember, double loop thinking may lead to totally different solutions. More correct is to say that the double loop learning means that we question our understanding of the problem at hand and not only the problem itself. Now, questioning these frames of our understanding that I call shell of truths is a sensitive process. In order to understand things, we need references. For example, the figure 5 doesn't have any meaning unless we have a frame in the form of a number system. Figure 5 would have totally different meanings in a decimal system as opposed to a hexadecimal system or a binary system. In order to understand our environment as humans, we need lots of frames, the frames we use to interpret things. But questioning these frames means then that we actually destabilize our environment. This is the basic psychological reason why we don't like to do that. And it's also been called the curse of knowledge. Every time we receive new knowledge, we will evaluate it in relation to what we already think we know. And that evaluation doesn't necessarily come out positive. Studies of online discussions have, for example, shown that people on average treat facts that contradicts their pre-discussion opinion in the same way as irrelevant facts. The new facts doesn't even reach the frontal cortex, which is the place in the brain where it would meet their current knowledge. Fundamentally, this, from a psychological perspective, is because changing the frame is sensitive even to our self-perception and our identity. New knowledge may lead us to having to question ourselves, which is something we try to protect ourselves from. There is even psychological barriers. Our thought system, like all our organs, is optimized to use energy as efficiently as possible. Our brain is the organ which has the highest energy consumption. Questioning existing beliefs is sometimes something we do in what has been called System 2. Or, you could compare that to double loop learning. This is a very energy consuming state of mind, which is also the reason why we have less access to it under stress, because the body is then focusing on energy for other parts, as arms and legs, for example. The other form of knowledge integration, acting as a system, can be understood this way. This happens when individuals see themselves as part of a team or a system. Hence, they can act as part of the team, meaning that they can use the knowledge and resources of others. For example, since we have an accountant in the firm, I don't need to care about bookkeeping, but can focus on sales, which is my role. Now, as you can understand, enacting a system like that means that the individuals needs to visualize the system. This vision is called a representation. That is the picture of how everything in the team fits together. Both the task and the roles, the members, the situation, etc. It all forms a sort of a picture. Sharing at least parts of a representation is a necessity for enacting a system. The other function will be that the members also chose to act according to the system. Since we as individuals always have a certain degree of discretion in how we enact our role, this discretionary coordination becomes a vital part of the system. If people focus on how to play their role and what happens to the system, it is called heedful interrelating. If they are unfocused and sloppy about this, the system will of course become weak. Now, we have all the parts in order to define what we mean by collective intelligence. Here we define it as when a group of people have an idea of how they fit together in relation to a common task and tries to enact that both in the form of actions in a system, but also by being able to question the system, the task and frame. So you can understand why this is complicated. Of course, it means that the individuals will need to be synchronized in when they should focus on enacting the system and when it's relevant to question it, the task or the frame. Otherwise, they risk to become collectively unintelligent, just because by the mere fact that some tries to enact something that others question. You can think about it as a football team or soccer team playing a game. There's one situation when they're on the field playing together. That is not the best time to question the system because it's very hard to change a system of 11 players during the match. But in the half period, when there's a rest for 15 minutes and they sit outside of the field, they can sort of discuss any changes they want to do in the system. And then in the second half of the game, go out and try to enact that new change system. So, if we summarize this fifth lecture, knowledge can be integrated in the form of learning or in the form of a collective system. Learning can be within a problem setting, which is single loop learning, or it can include the problem setting itself, which would be double loop learning. Double loop learning has both psychological and physiological barriers which in turn hinder knowledge integration. Psychological hindrance is due to the individual's need to protect their self-image and identity, which is that they do not like to change their frame of references because that will also change their perspective of things around them. Physiological hindrance is due to the energy saving, limiting the use of our brain. For example, when we're very tired or under stress, we actually get limited access to our full capacity of thinking and knowing things. Knowledge integration as a collective system can be called transactive memory system, which need an understanding of the system, that is the representation, and an adherence to the system, which is heedful interrelating. Together, learning and enacting as a collective system form the basis for our definition of collective intelligence, which is a process in which a number of interacting individuals in a given situation integrate their available knowledge resources in order to interpret and overcome ambiguous challenges by using both abstract thinking and coordinated actions. Thank you.